Introduction. In this review, I will uncover the 12 top laws of power with the origins, hidden facets, and internal mechanisms. Irrespective of our preferences, as humans, we are thrust into an ongoing competition, the realm of power. This contest has persisted since the beginning of time, and knowingly or unknowingly, each of us is a participant. Occasionally, the contest is overt and marked by bloodshed. However, more frequently, it operates subtly, indirectly, in the shadows. The pivotal question is, are you acquainted with the rules, and are you actively striving for success? Some individuals opt to dismiss it, convincing themselves that they can abstain from the power game. Alternatively, they may protest that the game is malevolent and antisocial, a remnant of less ethical and democratic eras. Unfortunately, those who reject the game often become subservient to those who embrace it. Others, resembling assertive playground bullies or charismatic business magnates, appear to be natural experts, effortlessly dominating. However, the game is not inherently biased in their favor. Anyone can acquire and master their skills by studying and adeptly engaging in the game. In The 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene outlines the regulations of the game, drawing on historical instances from civilizations worldwide and leveraging 3 millennia of history. He distills insights from master manipulators to guide you on outmaneuvering adversaries and evolving into a skilled player, a contemporary Machiavelli. In this summary, we offer you a sneak peek, an initial exposure, to the concept of power by summarizing 12 of the book's 48 laws. After all, revealing all the secrets wouldn't be in our best interest. Within this overview, you'll learn how a novice's error can lead to significant victories, why a finance minister faced imprisonment for organizing an extravagant celebration for his king, the strategic wisdom that, at times, surrendering provides the optimal opportunity to triumph in a battle. Don't surpass your superior. Have you ever attempted to impress your supervisor, only to see your efforts backfire? You may have unwittingly violated the fundamental rule of the power game, according to Greene, which is never to outshine the master. The initial law of power advises that we should project humility to those who hold more power than we do, especially our superiors. After all, individuals in positions of power desire to be the focal point. Trying too hard to impress them can divert attention from them to you, potentially bruising their pride. Even worse is acting superior to them, as this could lead your superior to perceive you as a threat to their position. In such a case, they might take steps to eliminate you from your role altogether. Consider the case of King Louis XIV of France and Nicolas Fouquet, the king's finance minister. Despite being a smart and loyal advisor, Fouquet found himself dispensable when the position of prime minister became vacant. In an effort to win the king's favor, Fouquet hosted an opulent party at his lavishly furnished chateau, showcasing his connections and influence. The consequence was swift. Fouquet was arrested the next day at the king's behest. Feeling overshadowed, Louis XIV accused the minister of theft to amass such wealth. Regardless of the truth, Fouquet spent his remaining days in prison. Therefore, acts of extravagance and displays of personal brilliance may not impress your boss. In fact, they could have the opposite effect. So, what's a better strategy? Always strive to make the person in charge appear superior to everyone, including yourself. Take Galileo Galilei as an illustration. Desperate for funding, he devised a clever approach. Instead of soliciting various patrons, he focused on a single family, the Medicis. In 1610, when he discovered Jupiter's 4 moons, he cleverly linked this celestial event to the Medici dynasty, recently symbolized by Cosimo II de' Medici as Jupiter. By presenting his discovery as a cosmic celebration of the family's greatness, with the moons representing Cosimo II and his brothers, and Jupiter as Cosimo I, the father of the Medici brothers, Galileo massaged his patron's ego. The Medici family interpreted the discovery as a heavenly endorsement of their eminence. Galileo's strategic alignment of the Medici family with cosmic glory secured him a salaried position as the official philosopher and mathematician of Cosimo II, eliminating the need for future funding pleas. Appropriate the achievements of others and safeguard your own. Have you ever contemplated appropriating portions of someone else's work, cleverly incorporating them as your own through a bit of plagiarism? Perhaps you've discreetly borrowed answers from a classmate during a math exam. Whether you have or haven't, the reality is that achieving power often involves leveraging the efforts of others for your benefit. Why expend your own energy when someone else can perform the tasks for you? Consider the case of Serbian scientist Nikola Tesla, who worked under the renowned inventor Thomas Edison. Surprisingly, it was Tesla, not Edison, who played a pivotal role in enhancing Edison's primitive design to create the celebrated dynamo. Tesla dedicated a whole year to this effort, often putting in 18-hour workdays in the laboratory. Yet, credit for the dynamo is attributed to Edison. Little has changed since then. Consider how few politicians compose their own speeches or how prominent novelists often borrow from other writers. However, merely reaping the rewards of others' work is insufficient. You must also claim credit for it. Edison and his company took full credit for Tesla's contributions to the dynamo. Despite Edison's promise to pay Tesla $50,000, he did not share a penny of his profits with him. Taking a lesson from Tesla's experience, recognize that the acknowledgement given for an invention or creation is as crucial as the invention itself. If you fail to claim credit, someone else may swoop in, appropriate your idea, and garner all the accolades that accompany it. Attaining control over someone involves understanding them intimately and assuming the guise of their friend. Perhaps you faced the challenge of trying to outsmart your competitors but struggled to accurately predict their strategies. How can you overcome this hurdle? Another tactic for acquiring power is to gather crucial information about the individuals you wish to influence. To obtain something from someone, you must have knowledge about them. Understanding a person's plans, vulnerabilities, and desires can enable you to win their favor and influence their actions. Consider the case of art dealer Joseph Duveen in 1920, who aimed to make industrialist Andrew Mellon his client. Faced with Mellon's initial skepticism, Duveen resorted to bribing Mellon's staff to obtain confidential information about their employer. When Mellon visited London, Duveen intentionally followed him, coincidentally appearing at the same art gallery Mellon was visiting. Engaging Mellon in a lively conversation, Duveen, armed with knowledge about Mellon's preferences, successfully portrayed common interests, particularly in art. This approach earned Duveen Mellon's favor, and he soon became Duveen's top client. So, how can you execute Duveen's strategy? You could employ informants or, even better, adopt the role of a spy yourself by masquerading as the person's friend. While many opt for hiring spies, this approach carries risks. How can you be certain that your hired informants are truthful? To ensure the accuracy of your information, it's preferable to engage in the espionage personally. Although challenging, people are generally more open to sharing private information with someone they perceive as a friend, making the guise of a companion a highly effective strategy. Behave in an unpredictable manner to confound your rivals. It's a well-known fact that most individuals dislike sudden changes, but were you aware that harnessing unpredictability can serve as a strategic advantage in competition? Acting in an unpredictable manner can keep your competitors off balance, and here's how. In competitive situations, adversaries often invest considerable effort in deciphering your patterns and decision-making, ready to exploit this knowledge to their advantage. In such instances, your optimal strategy is to introduce an element of randomness. Embracing unpredictability shields you from being easily comprehended by your competitors, instilling a sense of intimidation and unease. Consider the renowned 1972 chess match between Bobby Fischer and the Russian champion Boris Spassky. Recognizing Spassky's approach of targeting the routines and predictability of opponents, Fischer strategically leveraged unpredictability. Even in the lead-up to the match, Fischer created uncertainty about his presence in Reykjavik, where the match was scheduled. He arrived just moments before the potential cancellation of the match due to his absence. Subsequently, Fischer complained about various elements, from lighting to chairs and noise in the room. When the first match finally commenced, Fisher intentionally made careless mistakes, an unusual move given his reputation for persistence. Spassky couldn't discern whether Fisher was genuinely erring or merely bluffing. At this juncture, Fisher had Spassky precisely where he wanted him. Confused opponents create an opportune environment for success. Why? Perplexing your adversary prompts them to invest energy in deciphering your behavior, diverting their focus from the primary task and providing you with a chance to seize the initiative. Consequently, after 2 chess games, Fisher embarked on a winning streak with bold moves. Spassky eventually conceded, leading to Fisher's recognition as the world champion. Yielding to a more formidable adversary can pave the way for future empowerment. Have you ever faced an opponent knowing that victory is an impossibility? While it's common for individuals to engage in battles against the odds for the sake of glory, such endeavors seldom lead to true power. So, what should be your approach when confronted by a stronger opponent? Consider surrender. This might seem like an unconventional strategy, especially given the human instinct to resist enemies for self-preservation. However, when a competitor acts aggressively, the expectation is often a reciprocal response. In situations where it is clear that the competition outmatches you, the wisest move is to concede. Why? Surrendering, or at least convincingly conveying the notion of surrender, ensures that substantial harm will not be inflicted upon you. Moreover, by leading your opponent to believe they have triumphed, they may lower their guard. This momentary lapse provides a valuable opportunity for you to recover your strength and strategize for the next phase. Consider the example of Bertolt Brecht, a proponent of revolutionary communist ideas who immigrated to the United States in 1941. Post-World War II, Brecht and his intellectual peers faced a congressional inquiry into alleged communist infiltration of Hollywood. While others in his group caused disruptions by being uncooperative, Brecht remained composed and answered questions politely. Due to his cooperative behavior, Brecht was released by the government, which even offered assistance with his immigration process. Ultimately, he left the country and continued expressing his steadfast communist beliefs through his writing. In contrast, his obstinate associates faced blacklisting and were unable to publish for years. Emulate Brecht's approach and view surrender as a tool for self-empowerment. Focus on building enduring strength rather than making significant sacrifices for a fleeting moment of glory. If you desire to receive treatment befitting a superior, it's imperative to conduct yourself accordingly. Do you hold a higher position on the hierarchy than someone else? If so, it's crucial to embody that role, unless, of course, you willingly opt for equal treatment. However, a cautionary note. Attempting to act as an equal while occupying a superior position is likely to breed contempt. Consider the case of Louis Philippe, the King of France in the 1830s and 1840s. Despite his disdain for royal ceremonies and symbols associated with the throne, he opted for informality, often donning a grey hat and replacing his crown and scepter with an umbrella. Additionally, he preferred the company of bankers over royalty. However, this unconventional behavior led to widespread animosity. Both the wealthy disapproved of his unorthodox approach, and the poor resented a monarch who mimicked lower-class habits without advocating for their welfare. Even his banker associates turned against him when they realized they could insult him without consequence. The growing animosity eventually culminated in a popular uprising, forcing him to abdicate the throne. In general, when higher-ups behave as equals, suspicion arises. Such conduct may be interpreted as dishonesty, with others assuming that modest gestures are merely a crafty ploy to obscure inherent privileges. So, what's a more effective strategy? Adopt the strategy of the crown, to elicit royal treatment from others. Simply put, if you genuinely believe in your superiority and act accordingly, people will begin to perceive you as such. They will assume that there is a valid reason for your comportment. Christopher Columbus exemplified this approach, projecting a regal demeanor that led most people to regard him as royalty. Indeed, his confident interactions with the Spanish royal family played a crucial role in persuading the Spanish throne to finance his voyages. Seduction proves more effective than coercion in acquiring power over others. Imagine yourself in the shoes of Zhuge Liang, the chief strategist for the ancient Chinese state of Shu. The nation is under threat from King Mengwo, who has declared war from the south. Your responsibility is to thwart him and save the country. Before delving into the recommended course of action, it's crucial to understand what should be avoided. Firstly, relying on force and coercive methods is never advisable, even when they appear as the most straightforward option. Employing strength often generates covert resentment because force tends to provoke resistance. Liang recognized this and refrained from launching an attack, despite the likelihood of defeating the invading army. Had he chosen force, Mengwo would likely harbor resentment towards both China and Liang, prompting the continuous need for national defense. This approach would have exhausted all parties involved and fostered a sense of paranoia. A superior strategy involves seduction. People are often swayed by their emotions, and by manipulating their sentiments, you can influence them to act in alignment with your desires, willingly and autonomously. One tactic is to create a sense of threat, making your opponent anticipate pain, and then unexpectedly showing them kindness. When Mengwo attacked China, Liang captured him and his entire army. Mengwo was isolated from his soldiers, expecting the worst. However, to his astonishment, he was offered delicious food and wine. While releasing Mengwo's soldiers, Liang conditioned his release on a promise from the enemy king that, if captured again, he would bow to the Chinese king. Despite capturing Mengwo multiple times afterward, Liang consistently released him. On the seventh capture, Mengwo, feeling increasingly grateful and indebted due to Liang's generous treatment, voluntarily surrendered himself and his kingdom. Even though Liang had the power to kill Mengwo, a fact well known to his enemy, he provided ample opportunities and treated him graciously each time. As a result, Mengwo's gratitude grew, leading to his eventual surrender of his own accord. In your pursuit of power, steer clear of relying on friends and consider collaborating with your adversaries. When faced with challenging professional situations, the instinct is often to turn to friends for support. However, relying on friends can be a critical error, as they are prone to comparing themselves to you and may harbor envy for your successes. Therefore, it is strategically wise to maintain some distance from friends. A historical example illustrating this principle involves Chinese emperors, who frequently faced assassination attempts orchestrated by their closest friends, many of whom were appointed as generals. Emperor Sung, cognizant of this peril, adopted a different approach. In 959, he shrewdly gathered his generals, who were also his friends, for a banquet. During the event, he generously offered them estates and riches, prompting all of them to retire to palaces. This strategy allowed Sung to reign for an additional 16 years, a remarkable achievement for the time. However, if distancing yourself from friends raises the question of collaboration, an unconventional yet effective approach is to engage with your enemies. In 1807, France's foreign minister, Talleyrand, perceived Napoleon's diminishing influence over the empire. Recognizing the need for a significant accomplice to execute a daring plan, Talleyrand unexpectedly found an ally in Joseph Fouché, the chief of the secret police and his long-standing political adversary, vying for Napoleon's favor. Despite their historical rivalry, both men believed in the imminent decline of Napoleon's rule and the necessity for a new leader in France. Their collaboration unfolded with Talleyrand undermining Napoleon's diplomatic efforts with Russia, while Fouché worked with the English to further erode the emperor's position. Ultimately, Napoleon was overthrown, and though Fouché experienced a loss of influence, Talleyrand ascended to a prominent ministerial role in the new government. Persuade individuals through strategic actions rather than engaging in argumentation. Have you ever found yourself in a lengthy and contentious debate that stretched into the late hours, concluding with the reluctant concession of the other person? While it might be tempting for even the most stubborn individuals to consider such instances as victories, the reality is quite different. In truth, attempting to convince others through debate is not only a futile endeavor but can also be perilous, particularly when dealing with powerful individuals. An illustrative historical example dates back to 131 BC when Roman consul Mucianus was leading a campaign to conquer the Greek town of Pergamus. In need of a massive shipmast for a battering ram to breach the city walls, the assigned engineer insisted that a smaller mast would be more effective. Despite being correct, the engineer's arguments led to his disrobing and eventual death by whipping for causing trouble. The lesson here is clear: being right and asserting it is insufficient. A more effective approach involves persuading others through astute actions. Often, with careful consideration, one can devise a strategy to ensure the acceptance of their idea while giving the impression of agreement with their opponent. Sir Christopher Wren, the renowned 17th-century British architect, encountered a similar situation when commissioned to design a town hall for Westminster. The mayor of Westminster, fearing structural issues, demanded 2 additional supporting columns. Despite knowing the mayor's concerns were unfounded, Wren opted not to dispute them. Instead, he built the 2 columns, leaving them unfinished just before meeting the ceiling. Years later, builders discovered that the columns served no structural purpose. Wren, in his cunning approach, avoided a pointless argument while substantiating his point. Eventually, the pillars were removed. When seeking assistance from others, leverage their self-interest rather than relying on their goodwill. Attaining power is a challenging endeavor, and if you aim for success, you'll inevitably need to seek support from others. However, the manner in which you seek assistance is crucial. While you might be tempted to appeal to people's benevolence and ask for help based on their goodwill, this approach can be a mistake. In the 1400s, there was an Italian prince in Lucca who gained fame through the support of the influential Poggio family. However, once in power, the prince disregarded the family's contributions, solely pursuing his own interests. In response, the Poggios conspired with other families to overthrow the prince. Stefano, a member of the Poggio family, suggested a diplomatic approach, urging the prince to consider the family's past support. However, the prince, instead of acknowledging their contributions, had the Poggios, including Stefano, imprisoned and executed. In essence, relying on appeals to do the right thing often proves ineffective. It's more prudent to appeal to individuals' self-interest. However, navigating this approach can be challenging, as many people struggle to see beyond their own self-interest to consider the interests of others. In the 16th century, Portuguese emissaries in Japan sought to establish relationships and convert the Japanese to Christianity. However, their plan failed because the Portuguese were too focused on their religious agenda and failed to identify the true interests of the Japanese. In contrast, when the Dutch arrived in Japan a century later, they astutely recognized the Japanese desire for trade agreements that would provide access to the European market, an offering the Dutch could fulfill. As a result, Japanese Emperor Tokugawa Ieyasu abandoned the Portuguese in favor of developing relationships with the Dutch. Excessive availability can lead to disinterest. Maintaining a degree of reserve is the key to being desirable. In the realm of dating, many individuals have experienced frustration due to the quirks of human nature. There's a fundamental dynamic at play. If your romantic interest responds promptly, your enthusiasm wanes. If they show indifference, your desire intensifies. This principle, however, extends beyond matters of love. It is a fundamental principle in the dynamics of power. While it may seem straightforward, the reality is that being overly accessible can result in people losing interest in you. A historical example from the 8th century BC involves the city of Medea, located in what is now Iran. Inhabitants of Medea were opposed to strong rulers, leading to a lack of order. Deioces, a skilled mediator, offered to resolve disputes and conflicts among the people, earning widespread admiration and love. However, as Deioces continued his mediating efforts, people began taking his services for granted. Since the population still resisted the idea of a powerful ruler, they had no intention of granting him additional authority. Deices failed to recognize a crucial principle of power. Desirability is linked to unavailability. The realization dawned on Deices that his value would only be acknowledged if he withdrew. Choosing to retire, he moved to the countryside, allowing Medea to descend into chaos once again. Soon, the Medians, realizing his worth, fervently implored him to return and assume a ruling role. Deices agreed, under the condition that a grand palace with a formidable contingent of bodyguards be constructed for him. With the people's agreement, he ruled the region for an impressive 53 years. Instead of withdrawing from others due to fear, surround yourself with those upon whom you rely. In situations where individuals find themselves encircled by others, some of whom may be perceived as adversaries, the instinct might be to construct a fortress as a protective retreat. However, isolating oneself in this manner is counterproductive, as it severs connections to power and influence. The attainment of significant power necessitates an awareness of one's surroundings. A historical example from China in 220 BC illustrates this point. Qi Shi Huangti, the Emperor of China and arguably the most powerful person globally, succumbed to paranoia in his later years. Retreating to a lavish palace, he created a complex network of secret passageways to move unseen within. Anyone who caught a glimpse of the emperor faced immediate execution. As a final precaution, he traveled alone, disguising himself to avoid recognition. It was during one such outing that he died, estranged from family, isolated from friends, and forgotten by his court. Isolation proves to be an ineffective solution. Instead, the key is to surround oneself with individuals upon whom one's power depends. A striking contrast to Qi Shi Huangti is Louis XIV, who populated his Versailles palace with courtiers obliged to attend daily social events in his chambers. The aristocracy, resentful of the king's increasing power after losing the right to independently govern and exploit vast territories, had been in rebellion. By strategically keeping these noblemen in his chambers, Louis maintained close oversight, employed manipulation, and judiciously bestowed privileges. This approach successfully quelled the rebellion, as courtiers competed for the king's favor and attention. In summary, the game of power is a perpetual force that has shaped history. Ignoring it is not an option, as participation is inevitable. To navigate this game effectively, one must understand its rules and strive to play strategically. While the dynamics of power have evolved over time, the fundamental principles of control and dominance persist in the modern era. Drawing lessons from the successes and failures of historical power struggles empowers individuals to become formidable contenders in the ongoing game of power. Thank you for joining us on this rewarding journey of knowledge and inspiration. If you found value in the insights we've shared and are eager for more wisdom from impactful books, we encourage you to back our channel. Notably, a substantial number of our listeners haven't subscribed yet, so we kindly ask you to consider hitting the like, share, and subscribe buttons to stay linked with one of the leading book summary channels online. Subscribing ensures a steady stream of uplifting and thought-provoking summaries, keeping you involved and inspired. Your support is pivotal, and in return, we pledge to consistently provide high-quality book summaries in a timely fashion. Let's persist in this pursuit of growth and enlightenment together. Wishing you joyful reading, continuous learning, and ongoing personal development.